Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, hear a continued discussion on how crops are looking and handling disease pressure this time of year. We have great supply of our wheat lines. Contact us if you'd like to try Merschman wheat this year. And stick around for the rodeo-themed corny jokes.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Lynn and Dylan. Ben's not here. He's doing his civic duty for the Fort Madison Tri-State Rodeo, so he's excused. So we'll let Lynn start the discussion.
Yeah, so in Ben's absence, we've had a lot of disease questions come up this week as we're getting to that point where we're starting to see the residuals of our fungicide applications done around that VT timeframe starting to kind of wear out, and the disease pressures are starting to ramp back up. So Dylan's going to talk a little on the corn side. Today I'm going to talk about the beans. The one that actually has become maybe more of a conversation piece related to why is it showing up is bacterial leaf blight. So a little bit about bacterial leaf blight, very similar to septoria as far as when you're trying to identify it. The biggest differentiation between those two is that septoria will start from the bottom up, and then bacterial leaf blight tends to be on the newest leaves and then work its way more on the upper canopy. So like I said,
this is for soybeans, correct?
For soybeans, correct. Yep. So when we look at that too, the big question is that always comes up is, well, I put fungicide on. Well, obviously in the name bacterial leaf blight, it is a bacterial infection that fungicides, unless it's a copper fungicide, that they're just not efficacious on it. Very similar to septoria, comes from inoculum that's in the soil. Typically, when we start the season off wet and cool, we see that expression happen at a much more rapid pace. So we definitely had those conditions, hot, dry, windy here for a little bit, and we're just starting to see that pressure kind of ramp up a little bit. But typically in the leaves, it can be on the pod, hardly ever affects the seed. The biggest management side of stuff there is rotating away to a non-host crop. So if you're having a problem with bacterial leaf blight, get the corn, get the wheat, a little bit of tillage, and that can take care of it. Right now, I think we are early enough. We could see a yield loss on the infected beans. So where it's actually coming out of is those low-lying areas in the fields where the water ponded. Just didn't get the very healthy plants all year in those sections. So I think we're going to see a potential yield loss in those. We're going to start seeing the leaf start going necrotic very quickly, and then that whole node, I just worry about having pod fill to the level that we're going to have in the rest of the plant. But overall, very not concerned about it. It's just something that's a little bit unique to this year that we're seeing. Like I said, looks like septoria, but it's happening at the top of the plant, working its way down.
It's not really widespread, but you're just seeing it in pockets?
Yeah, yep. And all here, this was at a particular field day. The grower brought the bean in. We're starting to see a little bit of senescence come in, and then when you start looking at the on the other parts of the leaf, it's like, well, that kind of looks like septoria. But when you start investigating the plant, there really wasn't much happening on the lower part. So that's usually kind of a dead giveaway that we're looking at bacterial leaf blight. Not a widespread issue. Mostly seeing that and hearing comments on it is those low-lying areas in the fields that where the water kind of runs through, or where the water just can't get away from.
Okay.
Well, Dylan, what are you seeing in corn for this week?
Yeah, so it's corn starting to kind of slowly mature and dry down. I think tar spot is definitely something that's been taking over even the green corn yet that maybe have a little bit of potential yet. Those guys that they say, yeah, I sprayed, or yeah, I didn't, but maybe guys are starting to realize now that just because it's tassel, I need to maybe try and push that application back, just because if we don't have anything right at tassel, maybe we can get a little bit more of that 3 weeks of that fungicide later on to try and keep that tar spot, because the tar spot now, it's littered the whole corn plant from head to toe, and it's starting to really tear down that corn plant. And then we know when wind comes, we never know when we're going to get a wind event this time of year. That's the worst thing that guys want is corn starting to, that stalk just has nothing left and it's going to blow over. That's never fun. So I think we can take out of this that we need to really pay attention. Just because the helicopters are here, maybe we can try and get them to to push back a little bit more, as it's really coming on late spread. It might not be a huge yield hit, but it seems like it's coming in sooner and sooner every year since tar spot has really come to this area. And even the guys that have 2 passes, like Zyway and Furrow at planting, they're even seeing it really bad. You can barely see any of any green left in the corn plant. So it's really causing these plants to mature a lot quicker than we kind of want.
So you do the pinch test, right? You get out there and second node, first node, where you pinch, and if you can pinch that stalk together, you got basically a skeleton holding up that plant. So that any wind or anything, and that's the thing with tar spot. It destroys the leaf surface, which is your solar collector, and then the plant's got to suck everything out of the stalk, and when it empties that stalk, you basically got nothing to hold it up, and down corn is probably a farmer's worst nightmare.
Yeah, and just along with tar spot, southern rust we're seeing an enormous amount of southern rust on the canopy. Obviously, we've gotten a lot of wind. That's how it's getting moved up here, and we're almost seeing it. It's almost like a tumor on the leaf. There's just that much southern rust pustules all over the corn plant. So we know that's taking away from that top end yield as we're trying to get to black layer and to be fully mature to dry down to get to harvest. So we just need to keep that in mind as we're getting closer to combines rolling, that we need to still scout, even though corn plant, we can't do much about it. Know which hybrids and which places that we need to focus on and get those out first before wind event or something else happens to them.
And that southern rust blows up from the south, and that hurricane that we had when we have it in August just pumped up the southern rust. Yep. And so, we talked about it on previous Cup of Joes, that be on the lookout. There's very likely that we're going to have a lot more rust. So this could be a really bad rust year too, yep. Obviously.
I think you brought up a great point on scouting for harvestability on that, because I think the other part too that we have to look to is, locally here, and I think for the most part, most of our footprint, we were very wet as that seed was put in the ground. We had very wet conditions early. Most of these plants maybe didn't get rooted down as deeply as we would like. Potential there for from lack of potassium getting into the plant, helping to build that stalk. We just potentially could have a lot of root compromised plants that when you start subjecting to root compromising, stalk compromising, and then now we're looking at disease pressures that's cannibalizing the plant as well. We kind of got a perfect storm there to have some very uncomfortable situations in certain hybrids and certain brands for harvestability as we push through. Because there's some big years out there that those compromised stocks are having to hold up. Yeah, and just to keep in mind too, just because you have one maturity here and then a longer maturing here, just keep watching those, because one hybrid may be more susceptible to that tar spot or rust and shut that plant down quicker, and you might need to go get that one out first. That's what we've kind of I've seen scouting in, not necessarily our power core, some competitors that we really need to pay attention to. Exactly. Any of those other brands that we've talked about previously having some issues with it, I'd be very cognizant of where you're at on the plant scale, because we had actually a customer that plants some of our beans talk about moving to corn for that reason. And when that thing shuts down, there's still some value in getting out there and getting that potentially harvested at above 20%. We look at, if you're a believer of phantom yield loss as well. So you could have two bonuses there: a little bit of extra yield on the monitor from the phantom yield loss effect, plus then you're not trying to pick corn up off the ground and having loss from that side too.
You guys have been in a lot of test plots. You've been in a lot of fields this past 2 weeks, but overall the crop looks pretty strong. I mean, we're here in dryland Nebraska, corn looks really good, and I mean I've been in Missouri and the corn looks good. Iowa looks good. Illinois. I just think in general, there could be some variability out there, but for the most part, if things went well, we could be looking at some really nice yields in corn and soybeans.
Yeah, I think soybeans is one this last well, we finally got some heat, and we know that soybeans like heat. This last 2 weeks on looking at soybeans, especially the later planted soybeans, how much they finally kicked it up, and didn't see those soybeans in particular, not seeing a lot of pod abortion or flower abortion, and then we're getting great fill. They're not necessarily the tallest, but we're looking at plants that the picture I sent over the weekend with my boys, that they were a lot of 4 and 5 clusters per node. But just not necessarily as tall. But when you start adding those, the pods per plant, or as the Pro Farmer Tour does, the pods per 3 foot by 3 foot, just because that plant isn't as tall, we're still getting those pod numbers and bean numbers in there. And a lot of beans, I'm hearing down in Missouri, they're having a little bit of issues in certain areas with that third bean not coming to fruition, but it wasn't uncommon to go through a field of ours and see 4 bean pods in those clusters as well. So I'm pessimistically optimistic on soybeans. I was a little bit down on them. I thought we were going to have a very average year, but the more I get out there and see how these things are finishing off here locally, it's going to be real hard to not get excited about soybeans.
In the history of soybean breeding, we have brought the height of soybeans down about 6 inches from the early 60s till now, and it's just because better standability. That's a must for a farmer, and just a general the way soybeans in general are getting shorter with, again, the higher yields. I guess stems and leaves don't necessarily make yield. It's pods that actually add up. So.
Yeah, that's the last on the last thing that I would like to add here is we are hot and heavy in the wheat selling season. So if you guys haven't made your wheat decisions yet, the Millie and the Binti, we're having great conversations with individuals on that, looking at double crop options in those, and then the constant, we're getting 4 or 5 emails, phone calls a week on the hyper early lines, and the prospects of putting that double crop line further north. Wheat prices are looking pretty decent in relation to the input cost for corn. So if you got some of that marginal acre that we've talked about, this double crop option looks phenomenal. And the quality that Shannon and Jake are seeing in the wheat that's over in the plant right now, I think it's another one of those really, really great wheat years from a quality standpoint.
Yeah, our Maddie is still, we have huge supplies of all these products. Why do we have huge supplies? Because the seed field's yield is so high. I mean, wheat is a step change right now. The yields are there. If you manage it with fertility and with fungicides, 100 bushel wheat is very, very attainable. And so the interest in wheat is very high. And, cash flow wise, keep in mind wheat always tops corn when it comes to price. And the reason why is because it's a little higher protein than what corn is. And I was just listening to a seminar yesterday, and one of the guys said, wheat could be the crop that leads us out of this basement, you might say. And he was thinking maybe we've seen our lows here in the last few days, and we're going to have a slow movement up, not a fast, slow movement up, and carry this year is going to make sense. In other words, just store your grain is what he was saying. So anyhow, I don't know, and I'm not saying I do, but I listen to experts, and this was somebody that written books on how to grain trade and do all that stuff, so I assume he knows a little bit more than I do, obviously. But yeah, I'm excited about wheat. I mean, wheat has so much potential, particularly on the marginal ground, I think. And if you haven't looked at wheat, you need to. You need to look at wheat. And again, Dylan, you plant a 15-inch planter, works great, doesn't it?
Yep.
So all you do is get the different plates and set your speed, and then you just think about that planter that you only use once a year. You get to use it twice a year. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Well, since Ben's not here and working at the rodeo, and he works hard at that, we thought we would do cowboy jokes, because I don't know if you've ever been to the Tri-State Rodeo in Fort Madison, but that weekend everybody's a cowboy. So we're going to tell some cowboy jokes, even though the rest of the year they're not. But anyhow, what's a cowboy's least favorite car? What's a cowboy's least favorite car? Now, I want to warn everybody, these are really, really bad, okay? It's a Cadillac, okay? Why are cowboys so bad at math? Why are cowboys so bad at math? They're always rounding up. They're always rounding up. How did the cowboy know his cows were talking behind his back? How did the cowboy know that his cows were talking behind his back? He heard them. Heard them, okay? Where do cowboys cook their meals? You ever think about that? Where do cowboys cook their meals? On the range. On the range. Okay. One last really bad one. What did the cowboy say when his dog left? What did the cowboy say when his dog left? Doggone. I told you it was bad. Anyhow, we sincerely appreciate your business. We're getting sales have started at Merschman Seeds for corn, soybeans, wheat, and alfalfa. Remember, a lot of the companies out there are not offering alfalfa. We have a great lineup of alfalfa. And we sincerely appreciate you take advantage of our early cash discounts and save some money. And we hope that you and your family are healthy and safe. We'll see you next week.